Yeah, yeah, it's very long. Just power.
And strong and you can see in statements many kind of which are impressions or expressions that Krishna has given us to understand war of fire and we're also during the war, etc. And so quite a strong influence on feeling. And actually, if you think about it, sort of Bhakti achieved and he achieved such a success, even Prasadam Sayas, very practical things, and that's why ISKCON's model is sustainable regardless of the circumstances, and so his Vaishi experience really helped him in organizing ISKCON on a very practical basis. Then, of course, his Brahminical nature allowed him to publish so many books, so many scriptures, and we can understand if he would not have that Kshatriya type determination in his character, how would it possible to undergo through so many trials and tribulations without being disturbed by that, and basically living by the motto, either win or die, fight till the end, right? So we can see that all the three natures, even though combined in the same person, this combination was unique gift of Krishna, which allowed him to achieve the success he achieved. And so this is a very good example for us that if you have mixed nature, rather than seeing it as an obstacle, you should see it as special blessing from Krishna, which allows you to offer unique contribution of services, right? And so, of course, this is a big subject matter, which is connected to, we call it predestiny, right? Certain personal plan Krishna has for each and every one of us, and how do we act according to that plan? How do we execute it? But today will be, and it's kind of connected to that also. Today we'll be discussing the subject of spiritual entrepreneurship, which is fully in line with what Srila Prabhupada did, even though the term spiritual entrepreneurship might seem to be quite contradictory, because spiritual means, as most of the people understand, something which is not for profit, right? Selfless. And entrepreneurship is very clearly an activity for profit. So how can this, it sounds like oxymoron, right? An incompatible combination, contradictory combination. Spiritual entrepreneurship. And yet, this is who Srila Prabhupada was, and yet this is what has been recognized by one of our Christian brothers who wrote this article on spiritual entrepreneurship. And he explains quite significant and interesting things. As Janaki Pandit says that intelligent man should learn from anyone, right? So, and we'll read this article because this Christian leader is also concerned with the same thing we are concerned with, and hopefully all of you, all of us, that how do we introduce the Supreme Lord in everyone's life, right? Because as any serious and sincere devotees, we feel how beneficial Krishna consciousness is for us and for everyone whom we see, who comes in touch with it. And naturally, we understand that all the problems in the world, individually and collectively, are resulting from materialistic or atheistic mindsets, and therefore we want to do something to change the situation, right? How many of you are interested in that? Okay, good. And so, actually it's very interesting that Srila Prabhupada says in a number of places that Krishna consciousness movement is meant to spread God consciousness. And he makes that clear distinction because people have different traditions, they call God by different names, but Srila Prabhupada was saying many, many times, it doesn't really matter what people call God, how people address God, as long as they believe in God and as long as they develop their relationship with God, their love for God. Tradition is not really important. And so in this sense, these people are our allies, those who follow different tradition, but they desire exactly the same thing, to spread God consciousness and help people to connect to God and develop their relationship. And so, he is very eager in the same way, and he is thinking what is the most successful model for doing that, and his realization is that we need a new category of spiritual practitioners and missionaries whom he calls spiritual entrepreneurs. And he says spiritual entrepreneurs, they have particular features or signs. So the article is entitled 12 Signs You Are a Spiritual Entrepreneur. So all of us can analyze ourselves on the presence of those signs, see how much it is applicable for us, and if there is some lacking, we can think of, maybe to develop this. And because this article is written from Christian perspective, naturally Christian terms are used, like church or chaplainship, chaplains, or something like that. But we can easily replace those Christian terms with Vedic Vaishnava terms, right? Put temple instead of church, put priest instead of chaplain, etc. Right? So you'll have a picture, a home picture then. So let's read what he says. So you are building your team, you're even accessing your personal gifting for everything that lies ahead in ministry. What's the gift set you're looking for that in a leader or in yourself that will really help move your mission forward, reach new people, and prepare for everything ahead? At some point at the senior leadership level of your church, you're going to need a handful of what I call spiritual entrepreneurs. Often these people are misunderstood in the church. For the most part, shepherds and chaplains have run the church. Right? I guess that would be the equivalent of managers and priests, or maybe preachers even. We have people who come and they speak nicely, but they don't really do much practically like that. I'm not saying we don't need shepherds or that we don't need chaplains in the right place. Not at all we do, but what happens when all you have are shepherds and chaplains? Here is what happens. The kind of radical change that both the church and the world need does not happen. Instead, leaders hold the hand of a sick church and comfort it while it dies. I know that sounds harsh, but look around you. Isn't that mostly what's happening? I also know enough good shepherds and chaplains to know that they find the hand-holding of a dying church deeply frustrating and frightening. They don't want their church to die. But there aren't enough leaders around them with the gift set or mindset necessary to turn it around. Something is missing. The missing gift set in the church is spiritual entrepreneurship, something the New Testament called apostleship. It's the kind of radical determination, innovation, and fierceness the Apostle Paul showed. As I wrote about here, the church today is filled with shepherds to the point where shepherds and perhaps overrepresented in church leadership.
What's the word, Maharaj?
Shepherd.
Shepherd, like a sheep shepherd.
Yeah. This is Christian term for, I guess, managers or leaders. Yeah, religious leaders, shepherd. That everybody is God's sheep, and he is the shepherd, so he's herding everyone in the spiritual direction. Right? That's the idea, shepherd. Yeah, okay. Everyone is fine that, Christian terminology is not confusing you? Okay. What we need most as we navigate new waters in a post-Christian culture is not more shepherds, but spiritual entrepreneurs. Whether you call it spiritual entrepreneurship or the gift of apostleship, What we need is a new generation of Apostle Pauls who forge out in new direction, who experiment boldly, who dare greatly. Spiritual entrepreneurs are the kind of leaders who will find tomorrow's solutions when most leaders can only see the problem. And guess who is the best model for us? Like he says that we need someone who is like Jesus or Paul. And who is the best model for us? Srila Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada made it very clear. He said, I want all of you to be like me. Right? And then there is no limit to how much we can do. And so, and we're not talking about imitating Srila Prabhupada artificially, but actually understanding what were the special features in his character and his approach which allowed him to become the powerful spiritual personality he was and he is, and trying to see if we could develop the same features and use them in Krishna's service. So, in a marketplace that is in love with startups and new ventures, we need some leaders who are inclined to spend their lives in a marketplace, who will take their God-given talents and energy and throw them full-time behind the mission of the church. So it's really, really important for us to realize that we are living already for 18 years in the 21st century. Right? And my conviction is simple, that if you use 20th century approach, you cannot expect 21st century results. Right? And religions tend to get stuck in the past and not and be too close-minded to realize what are the needs of the present day society and how to connect effectively to people. Are you called for it? As I write about here, the fact that you have the gifts might be enough of a sign that you are called. So what does spiritual entrepreneurship look like? What are the characteristics of leaders who can forge fresh ground in the church? And how do you know if you might be a spiritual entrepreneur? As I meet church leaders who are actually reaching unchurched people in massive quantities, here are the qualities I see among the leaders. So, who are the spiritual entrepreneurs? What are their specific features? And of course, for us, Srila Prabhupada is such a personality. And so, first and foremost, think big. Too many churches die of small thinking. And here he gives examples of small thinking. We don't have enough. It will not happen. Stop dreaming, or as we say in ISKCON, stop speculating. That's plenty for now. Who will pay for it? Yeah. Leaders who serve an infinite God should never have their imaginations deadened by small thinking. Spiritual entrepreneurs aren't. They think big, they dream of what could be, not what is, and they see the opportunity in every obstacle. So was Srila Prabhupada thinking big? Global thinking. How do we know it? Just look at the very first purpose of ISKCON and you will understand how globally Srila Prabhupada was thinking. Right? To systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and to educate all people in the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So, quite amazing. Damodar Brahma mentioned to me, pointed that there is no word God appearing here in this purpose. What to speak of Krishna? Why? Because Srila Prabhupada wanted to include everybody, right? Even if someone is not believing in God and yet involved in spiritual practices. There are such people. For example, Buddhists, right? They are acknowledged as atheistic religion. In Kali Yuga, you have even these kind of things, right? They have Dharma, but this Dharma excludes God. And we know, as Prabhupada explained, that Buddha is actually Krishna. But he came to cheat the atheists. He said, don't believe in God, believe in me, and I am God. I will not be telling you that. And so, to make sure that by worshipping him, they would advance. Right? So, and they follow spiritual techniques. They have spiritual knowledge, they have spiritual techniques. And so, and Prabhupada wanted to include everybody who has anything spiritual. And these kind of people should all be our allies to achieve real unity and peace in the world. So Prabhupada was very broad-minded. Then point number 2 is really important. That is, believe God can. We serve God who created amazing things out of nothing. Why do we think that he won't do the same for his church or for his temple? Spiritual entrepreneurs believe he will, and they see him do. They would agree with Henry Ford, who said a really important thing. Whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are right. Before you dismiss this as positive thinking nonsense, remember, Jesus could not perform many miracles in his hometown because of people's lack of faith. Then, moments later, he walked on water and fed 5,000 because people in those communities had faith. Spiritual entrepreneurs believe God can, and they see him do it. So this is really important because we can see in the same way as Jesus could not perform many miracles in his hometown. Could Srila Prabhupada do much in India? No. Why? Because people didn't have faith in him, right? They were thinking, oh, this is another Indian. I know Krishna, I know Bhagavad Gita, so I don't have to listen to him. I don't have to take him seriously, right? So Saint Srila Prabhupada, same powerful representative of Krishna, could do practically nothing in India. Had to struggle very hard and become completely frustrated. But when he came to the Western world, amazing things started happening. Why? Because people took him seriously. And so, what is the lesson for all of us we can take for our life? Anyone has any idea?
Get their own community.
Yeah, that actually there is a proverb in Russian language at least that there is no prophet in your own motherland. But you cannot become a prophet in your own country because of familiarity breeds contempt, right? So, but in more specific sense, that only associate with your well-wishers and supporters, right? And do not waste time with anyone else. Even if they might be Vaishnavas chanting Hare Krishna, just respect them from distance. Don't deal with them. Only deal with your well-wishers and supporters, right? If you want to be effective. Simple. So, point number 3. See abundance and not scarcity. Spiritual entrepreneurs see abundance and not scarcity. Give a dying church $10,000 and they will think they are broke and they need to conserve it. Give $10,000 to a spiritual entrepreneur and he'll see it as seed money to start something big. To a dying church, 5 leaders is defeat. To a spiritual entrepreneur, it's a start. Same facts, different mindset. Attitude is everything. So, does it apply to Srila Prabhupada? Yeah. That he saw abundance rather than scarcity, right? Prabhupada was saying that Krishna is no poor man, right? He can give everything. And we chose this picture because Srila Prabhupada said the only wealth, real wealth, which still remains in Kali Yuga, because everything else, that people lost everything, right? Before, in Vedic times, people had golden plates to eat from. Now they have plastic plates. In Vedic times, people were decorating the walls of their houses, and they lived in palaces, by the way, the walls of their palaces with real gemstones, right? Now what they do, they put wallpaper. So, huge advancement, right? So, and instead of gold coins, they use paper, right? And, nickel. And copper at best. So, all the wealth is gone. And Prabhupada says the only wealth in Kali Yuga are flowers. Yeah. Flowers are the only wealth remaining in Kali Yuga, and we can see Prabhupada's really wealthy man. Right. Covered with flowers. So, yeah, and we can see Srila Prabhupada came with, not with $10,000. No one gave him $10,000. When he came, how much he got? 40 rupees and $20 from the captain of the ship who bought his Bhagavatam. So that was it. In America, he said, I only had money, enough money for like a couple of hours of expenses, right? In America. That was all he had. But he didn't bother at all, right? Because he saw the abundance rather than scarcity. And he taught his disciples the same thing. He was just going ahead and he was saying, yes, Krishna will support, just serve him. Don't worry about anything. Krishna is no poor man. And at some point, I just been recently to San Francisco, where Srila Prabhupada opened his second, Prabhupada disciples opened his second center at Frederick Street. And at some point, they were really struggling with paying rent. And they complained to Srila Prabhupada, we can't pay money and we can't pay rent. Not sure how we can maintain this center. And Prabhupada said, come on, you're living in America. That, this country is so wealthy, why do you have to struggle for money? And they said, but Prabhupada, we understand we're living in the wealthy country. And Prabhupada would say, like, in America you just put hand out of the window and then very soon 20 or $100 bill will fall into your hand. Just money just in the air. And but Shyamachandra Prabhu was saying, Prabhupada, but like where the money will come from? And he was hoping that Prabhupada would give him money. Where the money would come from? And Prabhupada would say, Krishna will send you. But how he will send you? Will it fall from the sky? Prabhupada said, don't worry, Krishna will send it. How he will do it. And they left, and Shyamachandra Prabhu was very frustrated, and I'm sure he was with somebody else, maybe Malati or somebody. So they were walking down the street, and it was, I don't know how many of you been to San Francisco. It's kind of gloomy city, right? That there is not much sun in there. It's always, like always clouds and always windy and dark and pretty cold, even in the summer, like that. I've been in July, and it was between 12 and 15 degrees there. So this is San Francisco. And so they were walking, and it was, empty streets and all this gloomy weather, and he was in this gloomy mood, thinking where to get the money. And the wind started blowing, and fogs are very, very typical for San Francisco. You're just covered with fog all the time. And the strong wind started blowing, and already he was so frustrated. Now it's cold also. But suddenly he saw that $100 bills are flying in the air, and wind is blowing all this money right at him. We were like, wow. And there was nobody, right? Empty streets. Just this money blowing his way. And he started like catching, they started catching all this money in the air. And then they calculated they had so much, enough to cover many, many months of rent. And they came to show Prabhupada really excited. And Prabhupada was not even surprised. He said, I told you Krishna would arrange. Why did you have to worry? So this is Srila Prabhupada's, strong faith in Krishna. Made everything possible. Yeah. So he saw the abundance rather than scarcity. Point number 4. Think vision first, resources second. So what comes first, vision or resources? Yes, spiritual entrepreneurs are very comfortable with the reality that vision precedes resources. Casting a big vision, a solid on-mission plan, will often lead to significant resources down the road. Waiting for big resources so you can have a vision is a recipe for death. Right? So, big vision. What was Srila Prabhupada's vision? It's kind of reflected in here. Unfortunately, the whole picture didn't fit in, but at the bottom there are many countries, flags, and many people chanting Hare Krishna. So demigods are showering flowers, right? And as you can see, Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana is so big, it's covering few continents at a time, right? So Srila Prabhupada's vision was very simple. That his spiritual master wanted him to preach Krishna consciousness in English-speaking world, and English-speaking world is dominating the whole planet, Earth, right? Because there are basically two countries which are the key countries on this planet. One is of course US and the other one is UK. Yes, and so UK means Commonwealth, right? Australia, Canada, New Zealand, few other countries are all connected with the UK, and the US of course has global dominion, and these are all English speaking countries, and so to preach Krishna consciousness in English means you control the whole planet. And so This is what Srila Prabhupada envisioned. He had that vision very, very clear of himself being the world Acharya. Even before he made that journey, some of you who have read Prabhupada's Lilamrita would remember the episode when Srila Prabhupada was still, alone in New York, sitting in a park and kind of radiating some special ecstasy while sitting alone on the park bench at night. And one man was passing by and he was confused. Who is that man? He looks like a saint. He's glowing and he's alone like that sitting. And so he came and he said, do you need any help? Prabhupada smiled and he looked at him. He said, no, I don't need any help. I'm good. And then this man could not contain his curiosity. He said, could you please tell me who are you? Obviously not. He said, when he saw Prabhupada, the only analogy he could think of is Jesus Christ. So he said, would you please tell me who are you? And Prabhupada said, yes, I can. I am a head of a very big spiritual institution which has so many centers all over America and all over the planet, and I have thousands of disciples. And this man, I think his name was Mr. Rubin, he got confused. He said, but where are they all? Right? Because such an important man would not sit alone in a park. And Prabhupada said, it's all there, but time separates me from this. Just time separates. And he had very, very clear vision, even before he boarded Jaladuta, that one reporter heard that Bhaktivedanta Swami is going to America and he is nearly 70 years old. And he was wondering, why? What's the business in America? So he was interviewing him, asking Swamiji, what are you going to America for? And Prabhupada said, well, I'm the head of big spiritual institution and I have thousands of disciples there in America. They're all waiting for me eagerly. Actually, at one point Prabhupada said that every living entity is my disciple, but not everyone knows about it yet. And he said, I have thousands of disciples in America, they're all eagerly waiting for me, and I have so many centers. Once I come to America, they will organize a preaching tour around the country for me, and after I finish traveling in America, I'll travel to other countries as well. They will organize this also. Very clear vision of himself. Right? And so this is what happened. Why? Because Krishna fulfills desires of every living entity. Even if someone wants something for oneself, and so especially if someone wants to serve Krishna, why Krishna would not fulfill that desire? So vision is really, really important. We have to have very clear vision. And then Krishna will send all the resources. Then point number 5, invest in personal and team development. Spiritual entrepreneurs aren't crazy spenders, but they see a key distinction between an expense and an investment. They realize that going to conferences, networking with other leaders, buying books, and doing whatever it takes to make themselves and their team better is an investment. Sure, there are limits, but smart spiritual entrepreneurs will often spend a minimum of 10% of all the money they receive making themselves and their team better. So Srila Prabhupada Was he investing in people, into devotees all the time, right? Was he investing just 10%? No. He was investing everything. Actually, in the beginning, when Srila Prabhupada hardly had any money, and so his early followers rented an apartment for him at the Second Avenue and a shop front, number 26, matchless gifts. And one guest came to Srila Prabhupada to ask him some questions, and this was on Sunday morning. And Prabhupada's answering those questions, and at some point he stands up and he goes to a table where there was a little box with money. So he counted how much is there in the box, and he said, unfortunately I wouldn't be able to stay longer because I'll have to go out, because I don't have enough money, I'll have to go out and sell some of my books to make money and then do the shopping and come back and start cooking. And then this guest realizes that Srila Prabhupada is doing everything himself. He's selling his own books, paying for the cooking everything, then feeding everyone, and after that cleaning after everybody. And he said, Swamiji, you're doing so much effort for us, and you're, so elderly. You should not be doing it all alone. That the very minimum I could do is to help you financially, so please accept this donation. So gives him $50. And Prabhupada says, thank you for the donation, I'll use it for Krishna, but there is no effort from my part because it's all fun, it's all serving Krishna. I'm distributing Krishna's books, preaching about Krishna to people. They give donations for Krishna's service. I'm using them, buying boga, cooking for Krishna, offering to Krishna, and then with prasad I'm feeding Krishna's devotees, serving Krishna's devotees. So he was investing even more than 100%. He was investing something he didn't even have. Right? So investing into devotees, I would say this is the first and foremost, but at least very, very important, because, and the reality is not like that for us also, that we're investing into big preaching projects, advertising Krishna consciousness, right? Because festivals, Ratha Yatras, this and that, it's all investing into promoting Krishna consciousness, right? But do we invest into devotees? Not really. But if you are a spiritual entrepreneur, that should be very high on your priority list. Then, point number 6, believe this is bigger than you. Because of all the criticisms levied at spiritual entrepreneurs, the most common is often that they have big egos and it's all about them, right? Sometimes that's true, but most often it is not. Big vision does not automatically equal big ego, right? You could also see, like, if you look at it from material perspective, Srila Prabhupada saw himself as Bolacharya, right? Looks like big ego, but he was doing that for Krishna. He was not not concerned about himself. And therefore the best spiritual entrepreneurs humbly submit to God and are committed to a vision that is so much bigger than they are. Personal humility combined with big ambition for the mission fosters incredible leadership.
Can you read that again?
Personal humility combined with big ambition for the mission fosters incredible leadership. Think about it this way. The reason we're talking about Paul 2,000 years later is that Paul's work wasn't about Paul. It was about Jesus and the mission of the church. If your vision is all about you, it will die with you. True spiritual entrepreneurs know that. So Srila Prabhupada for us, of course, was a perfect example of Krishna consciousness, right? If we take any verse from Bhagavatam or Gita, we could easily illustrate every single philosophical statement with Srila Prabhupada's life example, right? No problem at all. But, and if Prabhupada wanted, if he would choose that, he could say, yes, this is what it says, and this is how I'm serving Krishna, and you should understand I'm perfect example in that, right? But is Srila Prabhupada doing that? Do we find in his purpose him talking about himself? No. Whom he is talking about? Krishna and his devotees, and just removing himself from the picture and putting Krishna in front. So this is personal humility. Even though he is such a perfect personality, he's not pushing himself forward. So this is what it means to have huge ambition, but not for yourself, for Krishna. And genuine humility, right? If you just have humility and no ambition, it's useless, right? Mode of ignorance. If you have humility without ambition is ignorance. Ambition without humility is passion. Both things are useless. But spiritual entrepreneur means one who can combine both. And so, yes, Srila Prabhupada had big ambition, but these ambitions were for Krishna. That's why there are 4 really important things in life, as one very smart man says. 4 L's we should focus on. One is live rather than exist, right? Dedicate your life to something worthwhile. And because serving Krishna, there is nothing more worthwhile. So that's real life, serving Krishna. Second one, love. Of course, loving Krishna and loving his devotees. And loving other living entities, showing compassion. So love is very important in life. Without real love, life loses its meaning. Then third, learn. As we know, Brahmanas are those who learn all their lives and also teach others, right? And Prabhupada was doing all these things, right? He was living his life to the full extent. Love. Someone was asking Prabhupada, this is surprising, how come that everyone loves you? Prabhupada said, very simple, because I love everyone. Love is reciprocal. Learn. Prabhupada was learning. Even though I'm like sometimes thinking, oh my God, he's like, he came to America being so old, and naturally, living in America, living in India his whole life, same like in Australia and in Europe, we're just using Celsius, right, for measure temperature. But in America, they use Fahrenheit, right? Americans have to be different from everybody else. And I was so surprised. Prabhupada just, switched to Fahrenheit as if this was the most natural thing in life. He started using Fahrenheit. And many other things. I mean, tons of details. Prabhupada was learning, right? Every day since he came to America. He was studying how Americans live, etc. What kind of approach will work to connect with them. You know. And of course, fourth and most important L is leaving a legacy behind, right? So not that you just perish and that's it, right? So all of us should be thinking about this, right? That after I go, what is the legacy I will leave behind? Right? Because Prabhupada left huge legacy behind. You know, one legacy very clearly is on the table, right? So many books he wrote, so many temples he opened, so many disciples he initiated. And I would say that disciples are the legacy which is really amazing. He left amazing disciples behind, and we still benefit from that association. And so, yeah, all of us should be thinking, what should be our legacy? So, point number 7. Is it interesting for everyone? Yeah? Okay. Point number 7. Ship first, improve later. Perfectionists make terrible entrepreneurs. If you haven't shipped on your vision yet because you're waiting for ideal conditions or the perfect results, you will wait forever. People email me all the time, usually after going to a conference hosted by a large church with lots of resources, and ask whether a new building or better lighting or a move to a portable location will help them grow. I always tell them it will not. Big churches never started big, they usually started very humbly. But because they are led by spiritual entrepreneurs, those entrepreneurs at every stage made the most of whatever they had. A spiritual entrepreneur can launch a growing church in a dying building with little money. Then they make all the improvements later as facilities and resources grow. So, Prabhupada shipped first. I mean, he literally shipped himself to America, right? Came on the ship. And, yeah, he, just today, invited me to watch the Hare Krishna movie. And, yeah, Prabhupada was saying that I came like a beggar to this country. I had nothing. I was just loitering the streets. I didn't know what to do. So, but he was just going, you know, he was not waiting for ideal conditions at all. I think in India there is also a superstition against number 13, right? And Friday the 13th is famous, right? Friday the 13th. So when did Srila Prabhupada boarded the ship, Jaladuta? On Friday of the 13th of August, 1965. This was the day when Srila Prabhupada started his journey. He was not even waiting for ideal date, just boarded on Friday the 13th. Possibly, this was the reason why he had 2 heart attacks on the ship. We don't know, but he didn't care. Right? So he started the way it is and went ahead, no temple, no problem, just Jagannath sitting on the grass next to Srila Prabhupada, right? Crazy hippies dancing around, you know, acid heads or whatever they were called. Yeah, like an Indian aristocrat, right? Living in such a strange kind of situation, having to stay in such a strange situation. He didn't care. Whatever Krishna was sending, he would take. And then he everything later. And yeah. Point number 8. Fine with ambiguity. Ask a spiritual entrepreneur how they are going to do it, and the number one answer is, I don't know. We're just going to do it. There is something powerful in that. If you have it all figured out before you launch it, your vision isn't big enough. Just again, think of the first purpose of this course. Real unity and peace in the world, based on spiritual knowledge and teaching all people the techniques of spiritual life. How are we going to do it? What's the answer? No idea. Right? And Prabhupada was not exactly, I mean, he was changing his strategies very obviously, right? In the course of the ISKCON's development. Because he had a desire, but how that will manifest, what Krishna will do, he was not really clear. But he was going ahead anyway. So this is...
One thing, Maharaj.
Yes.
He had faith that Krishna consciousness would resolve all of the problems, and he told Satsvarup Maharaj to write a book to illustrate how Krishna consciousness solves all problems.
Yeah.
Practical problems.
Yeah. And yet, even though ISKCON is supposed to be the kind of carrier of Krishna consciousness, one who gives Krishna consciousness to the whole world to resolve the problems, can we say that ISKCON is free of the problems? Unfortunately not. So how do we do that? We might say we don't know, but we still believe that we don't know, but Krishna knows, right?
Sometimes, like something, there's so many different situations around the world, and sometimes, some areas are excelling in, resolving some challenges, isn't it? That's why sannyasis travel around to enliven the people struggling.
Yeah. So it's really important to just, and points number 7 and 8 are kind of similar, right? Ship first, improve later, be fine with ambiguity. Point number 9. Risk it all without guarantee of success. Too many leaders hope for some kind of guarantee. I think this is pretty relevant for Indian community. No risks. Play safe. Right? I know. Risk brings no guarantees because it's risk. Spiritual entrepreneurs are okay with that. Most spiritual entrepreneurs want to die trying. Usually they don't die trying, but the fact that they're willing to is crucial. Ironically, if a spiritual entrepreneur has a solid plan that's on mission, they usually don't fail. But you have to be willing to fail to succeed, right? Was Srila Prabhupada willing to die trying? Yeah, he nearly died trying on the ship. And was he failing before succeeding? Many times, right? And how did he respond to failures?
Prabhupada said, I'm not a man to be disappointed.
Yes, yes. That he struggled so much to establish the temple in Jhansi, and then he lost everything, right? So he failed locally, then his logic was, okay, I failed locally, let me try nationally. He started writing letters to Gandhi and Nehru, preaching to them, and distributed his books to Prime Minister, right? Had some appreciation, but ultimately not much came out of it. So He failed locally, he failed nationally, right? What is the normal person's logic? We know. But what was Prabhupada's logic? Okay, I failed locally, I failed nationally, let me try internationally, no? And he succeeded. And my conclusion is that Krishna made him fail locally and nationally because he didn't want him to waste his time on a smaller scale. Krishna wanted him to succeed big. Right? And so, yeah. Point number 10. This becomes very controversial. Never wait for consensus.
Consent.
Too many churches will only move forward if there is consensus. That's a critical mistake. Consensus kills courage. By the time you have consensus, ideas are so watered down, they are worthy of the committee that put them together. You heard the joke about the committee, right? Oh yeah, you know that. You know who is the camel? Camel was meant to be the horse, but that horse was improved by committee. So anyway, those who have tried, you know what it means, committees, right? Spiritual entrepreneurs rarely act alone, at least the smart ones don't, but they are ready to move ahead with a group of early adopters knowing most will eventually buy into whatever is being proposed once they see it working. So, was Prabhupada supported by his god brothers when he started? Okay, yeah, I'm forgetting, Jaladuta, Prabhupada nearly died. So yeah, never wait for consensus. That he tried, right, to revive his guru's mission after Bhakti Saraswati left, but he couldn't get much support. I mean, this is probably one of two or maybe three of his god brothers who would encourage and support him, right? Sridhar Maharaj. But otherwise, he got no support, no consensus. He was saying, my Guru Maharaj, wanted me to go to English-speaking world and continue the mission. Nobody cared. Right? And what Srila Prabhupada did, just went alone. Nobody supports me, okay, I'll do it myself. And he succeeded. He achieved such a success that it was unbelievable, even for his very, very senior god brothers. Point number 12. 11. It's even more controversial now. Let the critics talk while you act. The critics will always talk. Spiritual entrepreneurs know this. They don't get weighed down by critics who criticize them. Who criticize others, do what others do and do little themselves. How do you respond to critics? By acting. Just act while the critics talk. You will accomplish something and they will not. Simple. Was Prabhupada criticized? Heavily, right? Like one episode when he brought his early disciples to India and they were not trained completely, pretty new, and they were doing many wrong things in India because their perception was that for serving Krishna you can do anything. You can steal for Krishna. So they were stealing from the market in Vrindavan. Brajabasis were shocked. What kind of sadhus are those? American sadhus. So, and number of other things went wrong. So they came to, Prabhupada's god brothers came and Bengalis, and they started shouting on Prabhupada. in Bengali language in front of his disciples. But even though uh, disciples couldn't understand exactly what they were talking about, but it was not very hard to figure out because they were pointing at them and saying Shuddha, Mlechas, Yavanas, and etc. Obviously, with their body language, it was clear that they were accusing Prabhupada in, what do you call it, embarrassing the whole Gaudiya Math by bringing these unqualified people to the holy down. And Prabhupada was not arguing, he was just sitting. This is the early picture, right? Prabhupada with his god brothers and his disciples are also there. And so Prabhupada was not arguing, but at the end, after they finished shouting and screaming and all this, Prabhupada just said one phrase in English to make sure his disciples also understand. And he said, I'm only trying to fulfill the instruction of my spiritual master. Which was, of course, not, it was all of their spiritual master. But Prabhupada said, I'm trying to fulfill the instruction of my spiritual master. And they knew it was true, and so they could say nothing more. They had to leave. So yeah, Prabhupada had to take so much criticism for everything, right? And yeah, he was doing things which were criticizable. And it was not that he wanted to be criticized. I mean, who wants to be criticized? But he had to do things. And so point number 12, I would say, is most controversial. And it is break rules. Quite obviously, you should never break biblical or scriptural, shastrical rules. And the great spiritual entrepreneurs never do. Their character is solid. But you're going to absolutely need to break some human rules if you're going to disrupt the status quo. Innovation always breaks rules. Why? Because innovation never asks for permission, it just innovates. So what the rules Prabhupada was breaking? Quite a few. Right? And some of these rules, he was heavily criticized for this. What is he doing here? Performing marriage ceremony. Is this a business for sannyasi? To do marriage ceremonies, right? Sannyasi has nothing to do with family marriages, this and that. And Prabhupada said, in America I practically became a matchmaker for my disciples, right? But what can I do? Because if they are not married, they cannot follow regular principles, right? Just illicit sex. So I have to get them married properly. I'm the only one who knows how to do it, so I had to do it. So he was conducting all marriage ceremonies. He was heavily criticized for that. And he writes about it, even in the purpose to Bhagavad Gita, he writes about it, right? And so many other things he was doing, which were very much criticizable. And he knew he's breaking rules. But his mission was to actually disrupt the status quo, right? And what was the status quo he was disrupting? And this is, by the way, very interesting point, because successful entrepreneurship is all about the disruption of the status quo, right? You understand it, right? That status quo means some very successful and proud company is controlling the market, right? and not really doing a good job, but because they were there first, they're enjoying all the privileges. And then some smart person comes into the market and he's thinking, okay, this is not right. These guys are, you know, abusing their position and people are suffering, so let me help out, right? And so they offering better service at smaller price, right? And so if you think of any successful business venture, this is how it's based, right? Thinking of service, thinking how can you benefit people, and so what was the biggest status quo? Caste brahmanas, right? Who were holding the rights to represent God for people. And so this is what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is all about. Disrupt the status quo, cut them down. Right? So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati started doing that, giving initiations to, Brahminical initiations to those who were not born in Brahmana families, right? That these caste Brahmanas, they wanted to kill him for that, right? Because he was so badly disrupting the status quo. So creating this innovation, but it was not innovation because it's all in Shastra, right? But the problem was that these Brahmanas were not following the Shastra, but trying to enjoy the privileges of God's representatives. And so Prabhupada took it even further, because at some point his own god brothers became like that, and this is very sad. This is story of religious institutions which repeats itself again and again and again. And okay, we disrupted this caste brahmanas, but then we ourselves turned into caste brahmanas. And so Prabhupada started giving not only brahmana initiations, but even sannyas to people who were not even born in Bharatvarsha. Right? And so there were many, many things. He was breaking many rules. Human rules, not shastrical rules. And this is how he achieved success. So, was it thought-provoking? Yes. So, how many of you are interested to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps, becoming spiritual entrepreneurs? Okay. Yes, question?
Thank you for such a wonderful discourse and sharing Srila Prabhupada's stories. Historically, we've seen in Australia as the church has expanded into different demographics. Community-specific churches have been constructed where there is a specific church for Chinese, specific church for Koreans, specific church for Vietnamese. Do you feel as ISKCON expands and grows, a similar division happens where, as we've seen ISKCON Sydney grow over the last decade, while ISKCON has grown, the proportion of Indians have grown accordingly, and we've seen less penetration into Westerners in ISKCON Australia. Do you feel that it's something lacking in our preaching, or it's communities are now being divided into different demographic specific Krishna consciousness?
Yeah, that Prabhupada's very clear desire was to introduce local people to Krishna consciousness, right? I mean, in Australia it means white people. And because, you know, it's like, you know it quite well, better than me, that there is not much glory in preaching to Indian community, right? Because, I mean, most of you are already familiar with Krishna, and so it's like, what is the preaching? You just invite person to the temple, that's it, right? Simple, because person's already a devotee, so, I mean, maybe to has to refine certain things, etc. So, but then if it is Indian only, then Western people, they feel okay. Indians just practicing their religion, that's it. I have nothing to do with it, right? But Prabhupada was specifically introducing Sanatan Dharma, and he wanted the whole world to practice Krishna consciousness. And so he was insisting that in Australia, Australians have to take it up. In America, Americans have to take it up, etc. Right? Indians are always there. It's not a big deal. But yeah, how to reach out to local people effectively. And my own conviction is that, say, those children of devotees born in the country, they, I mean, I don't know what do you call them here in
They still call themselves Koreans.
yeah, in UK, they're defined as coconuts,
I'm sorry, Koreans are
meaning
Indians.
yes, Indians, yeah, meaning brown outside, white inside, right? Because the whole mentality is Western mentality, and so for them there is no barrier of interacting with Western people, and so because you know their mentality, you know their thinking, etc., and so it's not hard to connect with them, and so next thing is to think how to bring them on board with Krishna consciousness, and of course you have to present Krishna consciousness not as Indian religion but as universal spirituality to make them interested in it. And yeah, this is what really needs to be done. Because if Krishna consciousness would be presented to me as Indian religion, I would not be really interested in it. But because I've realized it's spiritual knowledge, it's spiritual science, that was the big thing for me. Yes.
Maharaj, like in the points that you gave, you yourself mentioned there are some controversial points. How can we help ourselves to actually sometimes we kind of rebel against rules and you want to do your own thing, but when you're trying to do your own thing for a bigger vision, how to maintain that attitude that you're still humble and you actually want to do it for the pleasure of devotees. Sometimes you get into this thing that I want to prove myself by doing that.
Yeah, I would say if we act on the basis of false ego with no humility, which is more the passion, then we don't do what our guru wants us to do. So, as Prabhupada says, that the instruction of the spiritual master should be our life and soul. So I think that's a clear distinction. Whether I do it for my own self-aggrandizement or to please my spiritual master.
I really found the point valid and interesting that you made. And the first principle of this kind, how I never noticed it before how it's so universal. And some of the other principles to build a church to build a place of pastimes for Krishna and things, but that particular point is like I was giving an example about the solutions for so many different problems. You know, the crime problem, and the social problem, the divorce problem, the drug problem. We said, we can solve all these problems, but sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for our minds to think how to actually practically show that and demonstrate it. But that's a very essential kind of fundamental principle there.
Yeah, thank you. Because check the imbalance of values in life exactly refers to that. Multiple problems in human society. And Prabhupada, yes, he wanted us to demonstrate practically how Krishna consciousness does solve so many problems in the society.
You see, devotees sort of like inspired in a particular field based on that idea that Krishna consciousness is universally applicable. And, you know, like someone will go into interfaith, I'm into farms, someone else will do prison preaching. You know, there's so many opportunities that if someone, you know, takes the initiative and has a vision, you know, a practical and exciting vision, and then, you know, you see the devotees get really inspired about their particular service and how it affects other people, communities, and, isn't it?
Yes, and I was thinking that it's really important that, you know, spiritual entrepreneur means you are professional, you know what you're doing, and as we were mentioning, that Prabhupada was using his nature in Krishna's service 100%, and that's why he achieved such a success. And so, what I believe, on the basis of what Bhagavad Gita explains, is that every single occupation can and should be connected to serving Krishna. And so, because I will tell you that at the moment, you know, like spiritual knowledge and spiritual practices, it's all available and people know about it. And in certain places they know so much about it that devotees, it even obstructing devotees to introduce them to whatever, because, you know, it's like in Los Angeles devotees were complaining to me that we're doing book distribution and people are asking what these books are about, and we start telling them, you know, it's yoga, karma, reincarnation, soul, and all these things. And then those people start telling devotees things devotees don't even know, have never heard of, right? And so devotees feel completely embarrassed to, you know, because people have so much knowledge about these things. And so they feel, okay, they're like irrelevant here. And so they are asking, you know, how do we preach to these people? Because they already know these things so well. They can explain these things better than us. And I've actually heard in Los Angeles other people explaining the essence of Krishna consciousness in such a powerful and succinct form that my jaw dropped. And they belong to a completely different group. And so, but I was telling them that forget about teaching these people because they know already, just engage them. Think how to engage them, how to collaborate with them. Okay, if you know, okay, let's do something together. And because Prabhupada's idea was how to engage people. He didn't really care whether people will sign up officially as devotees or not. That was their choice. For him, the most important thing was, you know, engagement. And it will be thinking about engagements beyond just conversions. I think we'll be doing much better. And professional careers, that is the biggest demand of the modern marketplace. Professional spiritual careers. Because people practice their spirituality and they have their jobs. And job is for making money and spirituality is for you, for your benefit. But they have no idea how to spiritualize the job, right? How to bring spirituality into your occupation. And this is like really hot topic. They all want to know it. And funny enough, for us, this is like the basics, right? Bhagavad Gita Arjuna was a professional kshatriya, right? Professional archer, fighter. And this was his dilemma. He didn't see the connection of his occupation with serving Krishna. And so the whole Bhagavad Gita is to help him to have holistic understanding of himself and spirituality, right? And so this is our topic. How to spiritualize your workplace. And if we just capitalize on that, we can have the whole marketplace for ourselves. But I think the first and foremost step is, before teaching people, we have to do it ourselves. And so this will be our topic for tomorrow. How do you actually become spiritual entrepreneur? What are the options available? And we'll be talking about real life examples of modern days, of in ISKCON and outside of ISKCON, and the latest development in this direction. So stay tuned to our tomorrow's program. We'll carry on. And so thank you all for listening attentively, and we'll finish here our introduction to the subject. And we have Giriraj here. If anyone haven't got darshan, or if you have any desires yet to be fulfilled, you can ask him. He'll be happy to help you out with that. And so maybe we can have literally 5 minutes of kirtan and then move on to the most exciting part of the program. Rasayan. So Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande.
His Holiness Bhakti